Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Dadas show, coming to you straight from the Boma Hotel. I'm your host, Ashikumbune. The Dadas show is an inclusion and an equality program that focuses on issues that matter to women and their impact and implication in regards to the 2020 general elections. Of course, we always look forward to hearing from you, so you can always share your comments, your queries, and any comments that you may just have on all our social media pages at the Dadas KBC. According to an article by the United Nations Office of the Human Rights Commissioner, sexual violence has become a recurrent and a brutal feature in the general elections in Kenya since the 1990s. Another report by the Kenya Human Rights Commission indicates that there were 201 cases of sexual violence that were reported from 11 counties during the past general elections, which was 2017. Now, we do not know what all the data would be if they collected all the reported cases from all the 47 counties, but I'm sure the results would be bleak. We are approaching the general elections of 2022 later on this year, and there is a looming fear and re-traumatization that's happening from people, like in case everything happens the same way it would. And the question today is, how do we break the sexual violence cycle that constantly seems to be related with the elections? Before we get into that with my very able panel, I want you to see the following feature.
Electoral-related sexual violence on women has been a regular and immense feature of elections in Kenya for over a decade now. Despite a progressive introduction of new constitution and strengthened institutions and laws developed to prevent and respond to sexual violence, Kenya's National Commission on Human Rights documented 201 cases reported to have occurred in 11 counties, including Vihiga, Migori, and Kisumu during the 2017 general elections. 54.5% of the documented sexual gender-based violence cases were executed by security agents.
My name is Cynthia Resianchunet. I study at the University of Nairobi. I think it's very sad that women and children are still being raped in this time and age of the century. And then also during the election period where these cases are on the rise, I think the government should put in curfew. Like a curfew, you should not be outside your house before this time and do not be found outside your house after this time.
Yeah, my name is Jackie, and social scientist. I feel that women and children are the most vulnerable people in our population, especially the election time. And I feel that we need to start, women themselves need to start protecting themselves, being more aware, intentional, as they walk around during this time of election. Take care of your children also. We need to find ways of helping each other as women in the community. Start there before we cry out to the government, because it has to come from home. I think it's time to start thinking about the abusers and how to handle them in the community.
Kenya National Commission on Human Rights estimated that 96.7% of sexual gender-based violence survivors were women, and that sexual violence accounted for 25.2% of all human rights violations in that period, making it the second most common form of electoral violence after physical injuries. Most of the survivors interviewed by Kenya Human Rights Commission in Vihiga and Migori counties said they had been raped or even gang raped during the period of the repeat presidential election in 2017.
My name is Adrian Anyanga. Currently I'm living in Donholm, Savannah. At the days of election, most ladies are being raped because of one thing or another. That's a disturbing issue, because it's not something to be proud of as a country. Members of the community should be able to step up and make a stand against such a vice, because the women in our community are also important. There's a saying that says that behind every successful man there's a woman.
However, most cases were not reported. According to Commission of Inquiry into Post-Election Violence, at least 900 people were victims of sexual violence, a figure that the Commission described as the tip of the iceberg, as many victims did not report their cases.
If we can have a scenario where MCAs, not really MPs, MCAs, chiefs, are working with the police to identify such people and probably bring them to book. The other issue we've had is probably women are not aware that they can get help about such things. Yeah, you realize that most women would not even go forward to report such cases because they're not aware that they can be helped. Yeah, so the first thing I probably think awareness should be done by the MCAs. Ladies in the various constituencies are aware that they can be able to report such cases, and when they go to report such cases, are they getting the support they need?
Bringing to justice culprits, including members of the security forces, would assure women that they will get justice for rape.
Welcome back. To take an in-depth look at this crucial issue, I'm joined by a group of brave, compassionate, and intelligent Dadas. On my left, I have Alberta Wambua, who is the Executive Director of the Gender Violence Recovery Center, GVRC. Next to her, I have Jacqueline Mutere, who is a woman's rights activist and the co-founder of Grace Agenda. And finally, I have Dr. Evangeline Wangeshi, who is a counseling psychology at Mental Health Africa. Karibuni sana, ladies. Of course, I am joined by, I cannot miss to thank my wonderful and very interactive audience. Thank you so much for making time to join me on the Dadas show today, and I'm looking forward to interacting with you as we go on during the show. So I would want to start off with Alberta. So any form of sexual violence is a heinous act of invasion on somebody's physical well-being and social standing. So what makes electoral-related sexual violence stand out?
Thank you, Ashiko. So one of the reasons that this stands out is because then the vulnerability of women and girls, and of course also men and boys during the electoral period. And I'd like us to also understand that it's not just about the elections, it's about the whole electoral period, the before, the during, and the after. And it's important to mention that this has already started. So we're having violence that's happening, including now, we're already in the electoral period. So what stands out is one is, would I say, the prevention of the same. There's a lot of insecurity around this time because all the attention is, would I say, moved, to campaigns and rallies and what's happening. Again, the security around it. So you have also a lot of insecurity around the electoral period. So there is opportunistic, for example, rape. So people would be coming from rallies, they're rowdy, people would break into houses. People take advantage of that because all the security issues are moved to around campaigns and elections. Again, what stands out about this period is because you also have services that are not, would I say, operating at optimal. So you'd have, and also access to the services. So and from the previous cycles that we've seen, when women and girls, I'll focus on women and girls, when women and girls are violated, they're not able to access the services in a timely manner because of a number of things. Sometimes it's the perpetrators, they're not able to leave their homes, for example, and get those services. The transport system around that time, sometimes they're even scared of reaching out for that service because you're also scared of going and being asked exactly who perpetrated you. So that's also a challenge.
So Jackie, you're a survivor and of the said violence. If it's okay with you, I know this might be a triggering topic, but if it's okay with you, would you kindly share your experience?
Thank you very much, Ashiko, and thank you, colleagues, for being on the panel, and thank you, Boma Hotel, for accommodating us. My name is Jackie Mutere again, and I was violated in 2007, 2008, the time when it was the hottest time between ODM and PNU, and after the announcement, that was January. The announcement came out in December, but I think the violence continued onwards. And I remember that I was just in my house, but I knew the person who was coming was looking for my neighbor, but he did not find my neighbor. So I thought that was it. He told me that he's running away from the policeman at that time, and would I give him refuge? So I told him that the neighbor was not in, but he said if I could just chill around and then go back. So when I opened the gate is when I realized that he had bad intentions. And so he came in, we had a fight, he violated me, and it was only a month later, in February, that I realized I was pregnant. And so to fast forward the story, to make a long story short, after when I realized I was pregnant, I wanted to have an abortion. Of course, I was unable to have the abortion for the first time because where I wanted to go, there was a crackdown on the crack institution. And then the next time when I wanted to go for an abortion, I think I didn't have enough money, because that's the first year when my daughter was doing Form 4, and that's the year that they required, they brought, you have to come back with photos, you have to come back with this, you have to come back with that. The requirements, the school requirements were so high, so I had to take her back. So the third time I sat in the doctor's office, I went to now a proper institution, but he had gone for field work, so he was unable to come back at the said time. So he said we'd have to reschedule. By that time, I think I was about 6 or so months pregnant, and I was trying to hide it. And so I decided, no, I'm not going to go any further. So the next attempt I tried was to give up the child for adoption. So I went to the Child Welfare Center, and I registered myself, and I said, there's something called mother offer. Okay. People may not know about it, and you can offer your child to be given away. And I said I was not going to have because I know the
perpetrator of all that, yeah.
Jambazi.
The Jambazi.
Yeah, and so I wasn't going to have that baby. And as it happened, when I went into hospital, I was taken to hospital with my brothers, and we had set it up that when I have the baby, they take the baby and the baby goes. I didn't want to see even what was going to happen, so it was a C-section, and so I came out of the theater, and you know that time when you're waking up and sleeping, waking up, and I thought to myself that I heard a really loud cry coming from Simon. Of course, it's a maternity ward. Children ought to be crying. And I thought to myself, surely can the nurses take care of that baby? That she's really crying, do something. And then I knew my problems are over, toto umetoka, everything kwisha. So I turned, and only to realize that this cry was coming from somewhere right next to me. What had happened was my brothers had tried getting in touch with the doctor and the social worker, because the social worker who has to go through this process to come and get all the work done. They were unable to get hold of him. I personally called him. I have never been able to get hold of him. To date, he does not exist. That officer saw my file, just went like that. So I turned and I opened, and when I opened, I found a beautiful girl who her skin color is just like yours. Aww. Actually, really, a really beautiful girl. And I call her Princess. And she really is a princess. To cut a long story short, so I went through the recovery period, but then I went back into hospital because of my health at that time. I had to go back. I had acute sepsis. So the entire cesarean section had gone septic. So I had to go back inside, and I had to get something they call debridement. They basically removed the dead skin. And I stayed in hospital now. I gave birth in November. I came out of hospital the following year in January. And that has been the most traumatizing experience that I ever have, I have ever gone through. Then I took recovery period. I went to GVRC, but after some time for my counseling sessions. I think at that time the basic counseling number of sessions was 12, but I attended 6 because I decided I felt I was not, I wanted to process my pain alone, on my own. And in the process, I met very many other girls from other areas. And one girl introduced me to the next girl, who introduced me to the next girl. And I realized there's so many girls that had been violated in different places. Some came from the informal settlement, some came from middle income, others upper income. And so I decided I wanted to do something about it. And that was the birth of now Grace Agenda. And grace means strength. It means the strength to continue, strength to live, and strength to carry the legacy of of the children born. So the pure mandate of Grace Agenda is actually, first of all, for self-agency, because we realize there's a great big stigma around sexual violence, a lot of stigma, and it's very dehumanizing. Another mandate that we have is, apart from salvation, is memorialization, because government has never recognized the sexual violence. We're in a lot of reports. I can count the reports. Even GVRC has done reports. You've even quoted one of the KNCHR, Human Rights Watch, KNCHR and KHRC, and very many institutions. We've participated in them, but we've just basically become, we're a study. we're like we're statistics. We are not human. There's no human face to it. And so one of the things that we would like to do is to show people that they are real life human beings who are behind these violations. And then the last thing about it is reparations. Reparations for sexual violence, repairing the lives of these women, getting back their dignity, getting back the acknowledgement and the recognition from government. Thank you.
Wow. Genuinely commend you for your resilience and your bravery in finding a way to, I don't like using this cliche, but it feels appropriate, turning your lime or your lemons into lemonade. I mean, given everything that you have actually gone through. Dr. Wageshi, based off what she has talked about and your extensive knowledge in the field of psychology, what are some of the effects and the aftermath of such a horrific ideal?
Yeah, I think first of all, I just want to say, hats down for you. That takes a lot of courage and resiliency to share such a traumatic experience. I've been in the field for 15 years. I practice in the US. And the whole issue of violence against women, any form of violence, whether it's sexual, physical, emotional violence, I think if you touch one, you touch all of us. And because there are so many wounds that are left behind. Of course, there's stigma, which is huge. And stigma is those negative attitudes and beliefs that motivate the public to fear, reject, avoid, and discriminate against the victim. So you find out that the survivor, of course, there is the self-blame, there is the shame, there is the guilt. What did I do wrong? Is it that my skirt was too short? Is it my makeup, my lipstick was too red? That's why I was violated. So you find out that the person really wrestles alone. And because of stigma, then there is the idea of you die in silence. Because if you come out, then you have people waiting to ridicule and discriminate against.
Absolutely.
And therefore you become the bad guy. We got this message twisted. We should be taking care of the survivor instead of, punishing them. So, and of course, the survivor then they have challenges with reaching out for help. Being able to go out and speak to somebody about the experience, whether it's your primary care physician, whether it's a counselor. So we have barriers of healthcare accessibility and also affordability. Because are you able to go somewhere for help? Do you have the money? And even going back to that, especially in Kenya, we do not have, even in 2022, we do not have a mental health budget, which is truly a shame, because by now, how are we going to take care of these women? How are we going to take care of these children? Because once you touch a woman, you touch the society, you touch the children, you touch the relationships, you touch all of us, really. So if we are lacking the budget, then these women will not be able to get the help that they deserve.
One of the outcomes or the long-term impacts of violation is that a lot of women have got mental health issues.
Absolutely.
But it's only in recent times when mental health has become the new kid on the block that we're actually talking about it. But women literally run mad. Literally run mad. There are those who have got so many, they get nightmares. Others are unable to maintain marital relationships, unable even to relate the social, cultural relationships that you have within families, within communities. You're unable to maintain those. And because of the stigma, something happens to you inside. And unprocessed pain also deals with that. And when you're unable to manage that, and you're somebody you're still part of the society, still part of a community, you will automatically influence and impact those that are around you.
Absolutely.
And so when Alberto will be the first person to confirm that while we have got this wonderful budget and you'll take care of the initial impact that's on your body, the long-term impact, because there are no physical scars, the mental scars are much more long-lasting, and they can even be seen long after it has happened. And you can even translate that trauma to the children born from the violation.
Well, thank you so much, Jackie and Dr. Of course. Speaking of Alberta and what your organization does, what does GVRC offer? Because I know you play a very crucial part in all of this. What does GVRC offer to survivors of electoral-related sexual violence?
Thank you. So one of the things that GVRC does, GVRC is in 9 hospitals. So we have 9 hospitals that are under GVRC. And then again, GVRC has set up other 9 in county referral hospitals. We call them GBVRCs. So what happens when you go to any of these centers, and there are other institutions that offer these services. So at GVRC, what happens is, let's start even with the reporting of the same. So most of our clients will be walk-in. Other big chunk of the clients would be from the human rights defenders, so someone would hold their hand and bring them to the institution. Others would call in through our toll-free number or through the national toll-free number or through different institutions. So that's one area that's also very important. Apart from it's how then, and someone talked about it, how then do you access the services? So when they come to GVRC, we would have medical treatment. It's in detail. I won't go to those details, but there'll be medical tests, there'll be physical examination, there'll be documentation, there'll be the lab tests. And then we also have a component that's a psychosocial support. So that's a social assessment, because each client has different needs. And others might not be able to go home. They might need short-term shelter. Others might need long-term shelter. Others are even brought by their alleged perpetrators. So you also have to figure it out, screen, and make sure then that the person is arrested. Some of them are arrested there. And apart from that, then we also have the psychological support. So there's the one-on-one counseling, there's the group support groups, and the different referrals. Others would need legal aid, others would need different things. There's also then another area that I would call maybe access to justice. So on a daily basis, we have a doctor who would offer medical testimony in about minimum of 5 cases a day. So they would go to court, so then GVRC would offer the medical testimony. Yeah, so this is what we found, this is what we treated, and all that. In the different support groups, then we have also linkages to different organizations, be it economic empowerment and all that. So in all this, there's also then making sure that the referral pathway, the link from one service provider to another is seamless. There's also the bit of referrals, rescues, something that ties up with what also Jackie has mentioned is that for the psychological, I need us also to understand that it's not survivors who've just been violated that would come to GVRC. Others would come after 10 years, after 20 years. And Jackie and not Jackie, but some of the experiences that I've seen is that there is also now, when you talk about the psychological support, there is a fear when it's around the election violence cycle. You have survivors who now start coming to GVRC for support groups. They're scared. Like it's traumatic, it's now elections, I don't know what to do. Others would even leave and go to their countryside, and things like that. So that's in brief what GVRC would do in terms of survivors, but then there's also the other chunk of advocacy and prevention we can talk about later.
Oh my, I definitely commend you on that. Let me move to Dr. Wangeshi 1 second. Okay. Not many of the survivors are as bold as Jackie. So we have a lot, like we're talking about people who are going to show up 10 years later. Dr. Wangeshi, professionally, what would your suggestions be? Right now, if you're watching someone and perhaps this is already a trigger and they're experiencing what we discussed earlier about the re-traumatization, they're feeling like we're getting towards election. Do I need to get a dog? Do I need to move? Especially in areas that we know in Nairobi and other urban areas where the prevalence of violence is always high. And they're using this as a tool of manipulation. So what would you suggest to someone who's watching, who is either scared, who's been experiencing that, as a way to come forward and actually seek the assistance that they need? What are the techniques that you would employ them to do?
Well, thank you. I just wanted to add something that you mentioned, especially during this season of elections. Some of the really triggers, you find out that the survivors actually relive the moment that the incident happened. So, there are flashbacks, there are, bad dreams. So many symptoms kind of come up during this time, and it's so unfortunate. So what do? because the elections must go they must go on, right? But we need to make sure that they're well surrounded by a good support system. So being able to identify some people in your inner circle that can truly take care of you during this time. You're also able to experience, to express your thoughts and feelings. I hope you can be, resilient and have somebody you can trust so that you can share your fears with them, because the fears are real to them. So you need someone who will not argue with them like, that happened 20 years ago, 5 years ago, why are you still having nightmares? Why are you still having flashbacks? You need someone who understands what this means for you and somebody who cares for you. It's also a good time to identify a therapist so that during this season, you have a backup. You have someone you can call, you have somebody you can go see, a professional. It's also good to have, family members in your corner, but express your fears. It's so hard though, I must say. This is not easy because of back to stigma and also the public not understanding the whole trauma and the effects of trauma and the impact behind trauma. So identifying, and of course, faith leaders. I always go down to faith leaders because they're so important. Some of our faith leaders, they understand, they can pray with you, you have that spiritual support, because spirituality is also important. So identify some 2-3 people that you can call and that you can also share your fears with. Do not forget treatment.
Grace Agenda is a CBO. It's a community-based organization. And it was established specifically to respond to the communities. That's why I didn't want to go the NGO way. And first of all, I wanted something that was also much more manageable at community level. So initially when I started out, it was really just, it was a platform for therapy. And our specific area was specifically dealing with the children born from rape, because nobody wants to tackle that issue. And then I came to participate in the 3JRC process, the Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Commission. And everybody, there was something for everybody, but for sexual violence. So we were just a chapter in the larger discourse of historical injustices, but nobody wanted to identify. Then one of the things that also inspired me was that the IDPs were getting justice, they were being resettled, that other sectors, people were being given money for their homelessness, others were given money for their housing, but nobody wanted to talk about sexual violence specifically and the vagaries and the outcomes of it. So what I wanted, first of all, was us to discuss. And so it came out, first of all, that we wanted also to be paid literally, compensated for some of the vagaries that we had experienced. And our concern was what was going to happen to the children. Some women were still very young girls, did not know how to manage the trauma. Others were women in families. What were they going to do? How are they going to manage their marital and their marital relationships? Mm-hmm. So that gave birth to different, because the girls, I met a lot of women and girls from different areas. Yes. So I decided to start for them what they decided to start at, but make me a patron of small welfare groups in their areas. So they were able to discuss their issues at their level, at their group. So it starts, first of all, by discussing your issues. Mm-hmm. Then it developed into a table banking thing. Then they developed, and then they formed themselves formally into groups. So they had a very different groups in the different areas around Nairobi specifically. But now we've extended some of them. One in Mombasa, one in Naivasha, yes, Nakuru Solai, Busia, Kisii, Nyamira. They've just got their own group and they just discuss the issues. And specifically for those children born from, I keep expressing that because it's a dynamic that people don't appreciate. Yeah. And it really impacts what your life is going to be. Because you and the child will be stigmatized. You as the child, the first time I met a young girl, she was around 16 at that time and she had been violated. And I saw the child that had been born. That child was malnutritioned, had been beaten, had been mucus, had an skin infection, a scalp infection. The child was neglected. And the girl didn't care. And she was just wondering how she was going to manage this child. And as I speak today, that girl is 29 and she's a champion. Nice. And she can speak for herself because they worked through their pain. Dr. Harris talked about getting structures, getting somebody close to you. the nature of rape is not so easy, not at all. It's also within the group. Also, there are also some group dynamics, because others you'll find that even within a given group, they're what you call the mudomos, the mishenes, who go and bust your stories in the community. Then there are those who are very serious and are going through the process. They're still healing from the pain, and so they have gone through what Dr. you're talking about. They're still drinking, they're still abusing drugs, they're still smoking and stuff like that. They're still managing the pain. Some are wrecks. Yeah. Some have actually died. Actually, we celebrate about 3. Yeah, one was suicide. 2 was simply she got HIV, was unable to manage it, went back to the village, was unable to be managed at home, and so she died because of that. And I say all that to come back again to GVRC and about the process of pain. Yeah. As we speak, we have one person who was violated in 2007 who is still a client at GVRC, because, and it's a he. It's not a she. And I really embrace him also because he's the only one he's one of the champions who has been able to talk about male violations. Yes. And talk about the vagaries of male violations. He's unable to maintain relationships. He's unable to, he's got low libido. He has to manage his social, the social dynamics of being somebody who has gone public about his sexual violations and sitting with men.
And you know, being that it's the Dadas show and I'm thinking about a man and I'm thinking, wow, that would be, because the men will deal with their own dynamics. First of all, you're being looked at, were you weak, were you not weak? Yes. And sorry to cut you short, Jackie, just before we go to, because I want Alberta to give me one before we go to the question and answer session. Alberta, what would you want to see? Because all I'm seeing is loopholes and hanging and hanging ends and things that we know the problem, we can see the solution. What's the government doing? What would you want to see the government do to support organizations like this? To even stand out and say, you know what, we acknowledge this is something that is happening and this is how we will step in and change the whole dynamics of the, you know, what is, because right now the situation is looking rather bleak. If you're having people die over something that they did not call on themselves. You know, so just maybe we can take that right after the break. I'll give you a moment to think about it. And then we'll also welcome the question and answer session from our lovely audience. I know it's been a heavy topic today. So let's have our questions and our comments, and then we'll take them right after the break. See you soon. Welcome back. Before the break, a question had been posed to Alberta from GVRC, and I think we were talking about what does the government need to do? Where can they intervene? Because all we are seeing is, you know, cliffs hanging. How will we cushion? How will we assist the organizations such as the one Jack is involved in, what you are doing, to be able to curb this menace on society?
Thank you, Ashiko. So one of the things that needs to be very clear is that we need to get organized way before the elections. If all these organizations and governments were doing their work, or rather things are in place, elections, there'll be no issue about sexual violence around elections. I'd like to bring attention to the last 2 or 3 years. The government has really done some work, not yet there though. So one of the things that drew attention, so we have this, would I say the government's goodwill. We had ICPD plus 25 happening in Kenya. We had last year the Generational Equality Forum commitment. So Kenya co-chairs that at a global level with the UK. So there are 12 outlined commitments that the government, you know, needs to put in place. And this includes creating awareness around gender-based violence. It includes around protection, you know, protecting the citizens, especially women and girls, men and boys, not to be violated. It also includes response. How then are we responding to gender-based violence? It has issues of safe spaces, shelters, it has polycare centers. So it's very outlined on how all this is to be done. And that includes resources. One of the issues is about resources. It has data around evidence, that's evidence-based, you know, programming around that. Again, when we talk about this, I would like us to understand that as much as it's government, it's not anchored. It should not be anchored. It is anchored, yes, but it should not be, we should not hold one, would I say, ministry accountable or just the government accountable, even our own spaces. So, for example, the Ministry of Interior, earlier when you're talking about my colleagues in Samburu going to Baragoi and West Pokot, it's about not even just them traveling there, but how then do we make sure these communities are safe? How do we use the existing community structures, you know, community policing and all that, the local administration safe? Earlier you talked, for example, about the media and the earlier episode that you had on sexual harassment. Yes. So it's about, yes, the government, what the government needs to do, and I would, maybe again, I'm a co-chair of the National Gender Sector Working Group with the government, and most of us here are members of the same. But again, in our own spaces, you talked about your child earlier. So it's us then at home, how do we make sure that we're having conversations about gender-based violence, and not just about that, about gender inequalities, you know, and yes, we have big gains. We have Jackie here vying for MCS seat. So then she's coming to create a voice around women and girls and the issues we present. So what we need to do is to have all these forces, or all these players that you talked about earlier, to really be organized and fit into a framework then that is very systemic, and then we'll be able to address this.
That's wonderful. I hope that is actually a cue to everybody that it's just not the government who should take this upon themselves, every entity that is involved, because this affects all of us. It may not affect you directly right now, but you know, a neighbor, you know, a sister. So let's be organized. Let's take responsibilities. We're going to jump into the question and answer session where we'll have people asking the questions, and you will let us know to which member of the panel you want to start with. So first of all, we have Beatrice.
My name's Beatrice Karore. I'm a human rights defender. Nimetoka kikundi ya kina mama inaitwa wanawake mashinani. Asa kazi yetu ni tunawak na wasichana, wamama na watoto. We report cases of sexual violence, we rescue and we document. So swali yangu inaenda kwa daktari. Umeongea kuhusu mambo ya backup system. So I wanted to understand, because uliongea mambo ya spiritual faith-based organizations, that is what you meant, maybe, and nilikuwa nataka ni understand, is it churches, is it people who are organized? Because ukiangalia mambo ya sexual violence, it's something which is very sensitive, na ifai kuwa handled na mtu yoyote. Kulingana na ile experience nimekuwa naye pale kwa community, it's something which is very sensitive, si kitu ya kuachia kila mtu aweze kuihandle. So nilikuwa nataka ku understand, who are these people who maybe are supporting? Are they organized people? Are they pastors? Are they supporting these survivors with maybe ni maombi, or how is it?
Thank you so much, Beatrice. We have the next question from Ruth.
Okay, my name is Ruth Mombi. Thank you, Ashiko, and thank you, the panel, for that powerful deliberation. I'm an activist. I'm a human rights defender from Mathare. I work with a movement of women called Bunge la Wamama Mashinani, which basically does a lot of work in empowering and amplifying the voices of the grassroots women. And my question, I have two questions, and I'll try to shorten them. My first question goes to Alberta, and it's about unsafe abortion and access to safe abortion. And we all know kwamba when you are raped, like Jackie said, she tried to get a safe abortion, but it is quite expensive for a common woman to get access to safe abortion. Later she had to deal with the effects of rape. So nilikuwa nauliza, what is GVRC doing to make sure kwamba survivors of rape and defilement have access to safe abortion. And also, what is also GVRC doing to make sure that unsafe abortion and abortion discourse is decriminalized in this country? Because, you know, when we continue stigmatizing it, ndio unapata hata ukiwa rape tutaki kuongea kuhusu hata hiyo mimba ma ile kitu imekugoia through.
Okay, thank you so much, Ruth. I think we'll begin with Beatrice's question to the doctor.
Thank you for the question. So the issue of sexual violence, of course, it's very sensitive, right? Any violence, especially coming, you know, for a woman, it's so personal, and therefore it must be handled as such. But I think it's also very important for us to give the survivors options. What do you want? How do you want it? So we need to allow them to take the lead while we are supporting them. We are giving them the resources, we're giving them treatment options, we are encouraging them to see your therapist, see your doctor, see a psychiatrist, and also see your faith leader if you're comfortable doing it. So it's important we give people options and also remind them that it's, of course, the decision they make, they will have to live with it. But I think options are helpful to a survivor.
Thank you so much, Daktari, and I think that is completely well put. I think the next question was from Ruth, and it was to the whole panel. First of all, we'll start with the question in regards to safe and unsafe abortions and access to it.
So one of the things that we do is the prophylactic treatment. So we ensure and create awareness, and that's why we have the rescues and the referral pathways to make sure that the women and girls within their reproductive age are able to come and get the prophylactic treatment, which includes the emergency contraceptive, to, again, prevent pregnancy. You're right, we've also received botched abortions, because then the best on the societies and countries standard you're talking about earlier, there are women and girls who try and abort in unsafe ways. So we've received women who've tried to abort, it's backfired, it's botched and all that. So we'll provide the medical treatment to take care of them. Now the other part is, if someone came and they're pregnant, a lady or woman came and they're pregnant, within the current legal framework, you are able to procure medical abortion if you have a gynecologist and a psychiatrist, I think, and they're able to do a report and assessment, and they're able to provide that, then we're able then to do the abortion. Again, the challenge comes to, kama niko mashinani, nitatoa wapi gynecologist? We know the access to a gynecologist or to SAT. So what I know is we are also working in terms of statistics and also evidence-based together with other organizations to also try and change it legally now. Because again, you're also aware that a lot of our legal frameworks do not speak to each other, the Constitution and what's there as at now. So that's a discussion that's ongoing. But meanwhile, those are the options.
So now this is, I'll give it over to Jackie. As someone who's already sitting or who is vying, and we are all excited, especially to have another woman, political affiliation aside. We are all excited to have a woman at the forefront in this, political race. And I know that there'll be a lot of intimidation. We've already started seeing it, the name calling and the women bashing. And we're getting scared. We are finding ourselves retreating into our corner. What are some of the things for you that you have put in place for the people in constituency, the women in constituency, so that they can be encouraged to come out and vote for you without necessarily being scared? Because we cannot speak what Mother has put in place. We just hope that things, but we can speak to what Jackie has put in place for the members of her constituency. How will I feel safe? The organizations of the women that you talk about. What have you put in place on the D-Day so that they can feel safe?
First of all, it's, as Alberta said, it's before, during, and after.
Absolutely.
One of the first things that I did, first of all, in my political party, I told them that they must have a budget for security for the women candidates. That one was the standard, a security budget. And so far, what I've seen in my party, DAPK, Kenya, thank you, they actually have taken us, because we've been to two political rallies, and in all of them we've had special security simply because we were women. That is number one. At community level, and I'd like to just encourage other women. I don't know about what my other colleagues are doing, but for me, creating safe spaces is something that anybody can do. In the 2017 election, a safe space was a woman's house. That was the first place. And I could run to Alberta's house. Alberta could run to my house if she was threatened in any way or felt threatened in any way. Then there was the relationship that you had developed at community level through the groups and the various committees that are at community level in providing support to each other. If there was a threat, you'd have Nyumba Kumi on the committee. Nyumba Kumi would call the COP station, and if it perchance that you were violated, there was a standby ambulance to go to the health center, and then there was a referral pathway all the way to the system. But apart from that, there is what the women groups are all aware of, first of all, the hotlines that are available, and also the places, the safe spaces that you can run to within the community. Not all of them are public. Because if everybody knows where somebody can run to, it's not secure anymore.
It's
okay?
not, yeah.
It's not. But you have a network of a support system that is also that includes community health workers. Community health workers are critical in some of these places because they're allowed to enter people's homes. They know who is who where. What health challenges are there. They have a direct connection to the community structures, direct connection to the security structures in the within a given area. So that is what I've made part of my team, my election team. So they tell me where to go, how to go, when it is a good day. No need going when it has rained.
Yes. When
it has rained, first of all, it will be too muddy. Most people will not really want to listen to you. Who will standing in the mud listening to you? Those kind of dynamics you work out with your team.
My name is Roslyn. I'm from Sitam, Buruburu. I'm a women lead and I also mentor young girls. They are in church. And thank you so much, the panelists, for what you've talked about. I think it's quite enlightening to the women. And one of my questions, I think, has been answered by Jackie. I wanted to just ask about the issue of justice for those who go through this violence or this kind of issue of rape. And I think I've gotten the answer from you, like it's something that is still a work in progress. And you're hoping something will be done because most ladies or women don't get justice. And then my other question was with regard to post-counseling. I don't know if we have counseling that is done to the people who go through this because, yeah, I think they're trying, but I'm not so sure that it's well done, the issue of counseling. And lastly, concerning the issue to do with information of when you're raped. I don't know if the women know or the girls. I think a lot of sensitization needs to be done so that they get to know what happens immediately if they can visit the hospital or report the case and things like that. I'm sure it's something that is being done, but not many people know about that.
The principle of reparations is that you repair people's lives, whether you have the physical evidence or not. Women were raped. They didn't go to hospital. But there's evidence because they exist in reports. They exist in civil society reports. They exist in government reports. So the question of reparations is critical in terms of justice for women because children were born. Some got disabilities. Some did botched abortions. Some got HIV. Some have got medical conditions. So that the reparations agenda is there to repair the lives of these women. Then there was the public interest litigation of 2013. That was initiated by a consortium of partners to seek justice for people who had been sexually violated during the post-election violence. That ruling came 2 years ago from 2013. 2 years ago. Please just do the math for yourself. So the justice for sexual violence takes time. Nobody wants to get involved in the court process. Okay, it is very engaging. Physically, it is traumatizing mentally, and you can lose a lot of the litigants along the way simply because they're tired and they're not seeing the justice. So that's another work for what we want to applaud Martha Karua's appointment. That might help to also facilitate. And then sexual violence, according to the ruling, 4 people were given awards, and 4 people from the 8 litigants were told the burden of proof was the court made the system, the burden of proof be upon the survivor, not upon the state answering the question of the security of the survivors as citizens. So it's a very complicated thing, and that's the reason why Martha must come out and speak out about these things, use her position as a constitutional reformer and address it. Sexual violence for survivors from the 2007, from the 2017, and reverse the course in 2022.
In regards to the people around, because like we mentioned earlier, rape is not something that affects just one person in the community. It affects a whole circle. It affects, especially in a case where I know most of us were wondering, how are you? Because you've been very vocal about it, you know, so your child does know about her origin. How does that work, you know? Because most people will shy away, and like you said, you have so much love for this baby, and it is not paramount to you how, you know, she came about, but where you are right now. But there must have been a process where it was difficult to come to that acceptance. Please tell us about that.
She's 14 now, and first of all, she's a piece of work. Really, she's a Girl Scout. She plays football, plays the guitar, wants to learn the flute, bringing stray children home, bringing cats home. Her orientation is she's still a baby in the head, you know. She's not the sort of person, or her thinking, her psyche is not where you sit her down. And I'm not planning to sit her down, okay? Why am I not planning to sit her down? Because she'll know there's a time for everything. There's a time, just the way boys who are not born from the father eventually just ask the mother, where am I from? Or who is my dad? When she asks me that question, I'll be well able to explain to her. Now, the dynamics of my children. When I was pregnant, I told my children I had a growth, because I knew in my head I was going to have an abortion. So I knew that if I just said it's a growth, and the growth, it's a tumor, it's just going to be removed. So for me, that was the easy way of managing it. Finally, when the dynamics became too big to handle, and now I had to go to the Child Welfare Society, and now I just had to give birth to the baby, and my health was bad. So I could, at that stage, even if you had given me an assessment, I wouldn't have made it. That is why I also got sepsis very fast after having the baby. So my children were a mountain to manage, especially the firstborn girl. Remember, I told you she was in Form 4 at that time.
Yes.
So first of all, she was thoroughly embarrassed. Then I'm a widow. My husband died. My in-laws could not take it in. They could not swallow it in. My own personal family were embarrassed to tackle it. But my personality is such that I first of all just go within myself, and I process the pain myself. I'm not saying something that took over 1 year. It took over 3-4 years. But by that time, I purposed in my heart, now me, I'm an empowered woman. What is happening to so-and-so? What is happening to, what's happening to those girls that I met? What are they going through? Me here, I'm an empowered person. I come from a comfortable, for lack of a better word, a comfortable community, society, and I'm experiencing this. What is happening? Me, I will speak. So I told my kids, you know what? I said, I'm going to speak. Mama, I don't want to be associated with you. I don't want this, I don't want that. I said, okay, it's all good. Then after a while, they realized the impact, because now a lot of women started coming together, young girls coming, crying at my door. I'm meeting a lot of people, and they're seeing the impact of my work on the lives of women. Now they changed the story. They said, okay, now talk, but don't expose us. So that's how it is. So I don't expose my family or my children. I don't do interviews in my house and stuff like that, because it affects them. So, and I think that is in order. So now, dealing with the small one, as I've shared with you, her psyche is such that she's not in that space to understand or appreciate where she comes from. Because of what? The environment she has grown in is not of rejection. Because the love, first of all, came from me.
We've come to the end of today's very interactive, informative, and insightful episode of the Dadas Show. But before I leave, I'd like to share a quote by Martin Luther King Jr. that says, "Our lives begin to end when we become silent on things that matter." Let us stop being a society that has a tendency of brushing things under the rug instead of facing things head on. And for the powers that be, as you go around campaigning, please call and condemn sexual violence that is related to elections as the shameful and despicable act that it is. For the survivors, be open, share your story. You may not know what life that you are changing, and we applaud you for your bravery. On behalf of our capable partners, Journalists for Human Rights, our location partner, the Dadas Show, KBC production team, and my wonderful panel and audience, we want to thank you for tuning in, and we will see you same time, same place next week. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.